Hello, my name is PJ Caposey, Superintendent of Schools for Meridian 223. I released a few videos earlier in the year regarding the Every Student Succeeds Act and the evidence-based funding model. Since that time, a handful of things have changed, a handful of things have stayed the same, but I thought as we closed the year, it would be prudent to update everyone as to where we're going and what has happened at the state. So the intent today is just to help people turn on the light bulb. There's a lot of things going on, and there's so many acronyms in education as it is. So as people start talking about ESSA and EBF, I just wanted to make sure that everyone from board members to the leadership team to faculty to staff to community members have an understanding of how that is impacting us as a district, what the vision for those laws and legislation are, and how they interact with ours, and what impact that will have for us forward. So the purpose, overview, tying it all together, and then how we're going to leverage it will be kind of the outline of this presentation. Hopefully this will be about 7 to 10 minutes so that more of you guys will stick with it and watch it to the end. So let's start with the overview of ESSA. So ESSA replaced No Child Left Behind. No Child Left Behind kind of became a popular piece of vernacular in schools and in households. So we not only was it a catchy title, but it was really what made data start to count in schools. We had to look towards student achievement. Now, there were a lot of things that were ushered in positively through No Child Left Behind, and a lot of things that really had a negative legacy from No Child Left Behind. ESSA is the government and Department of Education and Congress's attempt to rewrite pieces of that law to continue to provide guidance and accountability for schools. And they did a much better job in looking at kind of a balanced scorecard approach this year. And what the process is for ESSA is that it's written at the federal level, then states have to write their plans, and then the schools within that state have to comply. And so the long-term goals are things that we can't really argue with, right? So by 2032, of course, we want 90% or more of our students to be reading at grade level in third grade, to be at grade level in fifth, on track to graduate in ninth, and then to graduate ready for college and career. And it's no surprise that we have been prepared for this. So if you look at our strategic plan and what we want to accomplish is kind of our big rocks aligned directly with this. That's for two reasons. One is that we kind of knew this was coming, but that's secondary. The primary reason is because this is just good business in terms of schools. We want our kids reading at grade level. We want them graduating. We want them proficient at math at fifth grade. And all that's based on research saying that if we've lost them by then, it's really hard to catch them back up. So it ties a little bit into finance as well. So like we know that if we invest early, that we reap the benefits late. The other thing that ESSA really does is it creates two new subgroups for us. So we got used to the term subgroups through No Child Left Behind as they started to measure progress and really examine and exploit the achievement gap. But a couple things that are new is one, 504 students will be tracked. That's a really low population in really all districts, but particularly in ours. But we have to check and monitor and report out on students formally with disabilities. So if a student had an IEP, no longer had an IEP, in the same way with English learners, if someone was in ESL, receiving ESL services and tested proficiency out, the state and the feds are now interested in tracking their progress longitudinally. So there's two sets of indicators. So when I said there's a balanced scorecard approach, they're looking at things in terms of proficiency. They're looking at things in terms of growth. They're looking at some things in attainment in terms of graduation rate. So that's 75% of your overall score, and I'll get into more details about that in a second. The academic indicators, if you look here, it basically tells you how your school is going to be ranked, what criteria they're going to use to rank you, and to basically tell you on your school report card whether you're doing well or not. The good news is that they've had this kind of placemat, this one-pager out at the state level the majority of this year. So we've had some time to sit down and try to operationalize it as a leadership team. The really tough part is that they don't tell you what data they're going to use. So for instance, at the high school level, you can see that graduation rate is going to be a big indicator in determining the effectiveness of the school. We don't know what that means. So we don't know, like, hey, you get 100% if you've got over 90%, if it's on a bell curve and it's going to be scored. So we know that it's going to count as 50% of the total, but we don't know how they're going to get to that 50%. And it's just the way it is right now. And so we kind of sit month by month. Every time that there is a State Board of Education board packet that comes out, I read it intensely and try to send it off to the leadership team and other superintendents to see what they feel. and it always comes out that there's just one more thing. They're going to go through one more round of research and input before they make a decision. So I can't tell you exactly what that means yet, which is really frustrating. The second part, in terms of, again, looking at the balanced scorecard, kind of focusing a little bit on the whole child, which is something we talk a lot about here, is success and quality indicators. And this looks at things that aren't captured through typical data of standardized assessments, etc., such as surveys, absenteeism, whether we're providing services in the arts, what our P2 indicator are. And again, you will see that they've got this broken down, and this table is great, but what does the climate survey mean? So is that you get a 5% if you just do one? Do you have to show that there's action on it? Is it a climate survey of all the buildings, again, put on a bell curve and a percentile rank to it? So we don't know exactly what those are going to look like. Additionally, you'll see ranges on some of them that are highlighted. The ranges are to indicate that over time that those things are going to progress and or be determined. So in some cases it's, hey, we're not going to count it in year 1 or year 2, in year 3 it's coming, or we have just made the decision that it's going to be somewhere between X and Y. We haven't made that decision yet either. So if you're getting the feeling like they're kind of building this, building the plane as they're flying it, that's kind of the case. And we can either admire that problem and wait till everything's perfect and wrapped for us, or we can start thinking ahead, which is why we're producing this video and why we spent time learning and trying to lead on this. So the end of the day is that on our school report cards, what we've had the ability to do in the past is just look at our data, examine it, and then you could click to other schools and compare yourselves, and Rockford Register Star would do that, and a couple other entities. What is going to happen now is that at the state level, we're going to be assigned a ranking. And so basically the way that it operates, the easiest way I can explain it is they're going to determine the lowest ranking schools first based on whatever their criteria are. Based on that, then they're going to look at all of the subgroups within a school. And if a school has no underperforming subgroups, then they can hit tier 2 or tier 1. Underperforming dictated that the subgroup at your school outperforms all students at a bottom 5% school. That's kind of the criteria they use. If that's the case, you can be 2 or 1, and then if you're in 2 and 1, the top 10% of all schools pop into tier 1, the rest are tier 2. If you have any subgroup underperforming, then you're going to get lumped into tier 3. So what most people, again, we don't have the data, so we can't even run a projection, but what is scaring most people is that they feel that there's going to be a ton of tier 3 schools. And again, I want to be very clear. I've said this a handful of times. This is at a school-wide ranking, so we're not going to get a district ranking. We're going to get individual school rankings. So there's a lot of fear determining on how people are going to come out ranked. Additionally, they're going to measure growth of students on a separate measure and give an A through F rating. So this is the first time that our state superintendent uses the vernacular rank and spank. It's not the intent, but it's kind of what's going to happen. And so we just want to be out there up front. We have no idea what it is. On some ways that you measure our data, we very well could be a tier 1 school in some cases, and then other cases we might not. And so I don't have any prediction for you. I just want you to be aware of what could happen. Here's a greater definition of tier 3. I'm not going to read it to you, but again, tier 3 is the fear where a lot of schools may fall just as a result of subgroup performance. So again, that could be our ESL students. So if we would be a tier 1 school for everyone except our ESL students, or except minority students, or except free and reduced, whatever that case is, it automatically drops the entire ranking of the school. And tier 4 obviously is not where you want to be. But if you understand, when you look at the tier name comprehensive, it's intended to show you that these schools are going to get a great deal of support. So again, it's not that rank and punish. It should be the intent of the legislation is to produce a system that will provide support. So here's the timeline. This timeline changes literally every month. So I've hesitated putting it out there, and I even hesitate putting this out there. But the long and the short of it is that we should get a ranking internally here in the next few weeks. Now, that's been said for a long time. So whatever the formula is and however they assign the schools, we should get rankings of our schools internally the next few weeks. That should allow us to create whatever narrative we want to explain positively our ranking or negatively our ranking by the time that it's issued in the school report card. The good news and the bad news is that this ranking is rumored to last then for 3 years. So whatever, if we're tier 1, tier 2, tier 3, tier 4, may last for several years until they rerun the data. And then in 19, we'll get that A through F growth rating on how our students are performing. And again, that may last. This is somewhat scary. The great news of it is that they're starting to look at, again, a balanced scorecard and looking at really what research says are the right things. The scary news is that we're going to be assigned to tiers and assigned to letter grades to dictate our performance. And we're going to be assigned those things before we even know what the measures are, which seems a little bit unfair. Evidence-based funding is better news. And so evidence-based funding really has to deal with what we are currently receiving in terms of funding, what we're spending on the students, and then what adequacy looks like. So you see, again, is based on research. So there's 26 essential elements. You can see the data there below, basically saying that for schools, they should be expending X amount of dollars to ensure that the following things are happening. Some of it's just class size related. Some of it is strict dollar amount related. So if we flip, we'll see some dollar amounts. So we should be spending $190 in instructional materials per student per year, etc. And this is, again, based on research, what a school should be doing to provide adequate experiences for students. And again, there are some regional factors. We are the majority of the state. You can see there is just going to be the negative, the net one factor. So exactly as you saw before is how we would be. So when we actually do the numbers, it turns out that we are funded at 67% of adequate, which is obviously not ideal. So based on adequacy, they place you in tiers, which I'll explain on a subsequent slide. What tier you're in determines how much new revenue you receive. In order to get everyone up to 100% adequacy, the state would need a ton of new revenue, which would obviously come through taxes or some other creative mechanism. So the plan to get to 100% is decades and decades away. But the intent is to do a little bit each year to get us there. So for this year, we will not anticipate. So this is a difference from before. We will receive a little over $150,000 in new money. So as much as we complain and belabor the point that the state has not been supportive, and if you can see that by the 67%, they did do pretty good by us this year with $50,000. So here's the tier. So they rank all the schools by their adequacy target, and then they put you into different buckets. The bucket cutoff, as you can see, there was around 64% to be tier 1, and then it was between 64% and about 90% was tier 2, which is where we fell, then tier 3, tier 4. When you're in tier 1, you get half of the new money that the state legislature says is going into the evidence-based funding model. Then tier 1 and tier 2 get the other 49%. So tier 1 kind of gets a double helping, which is why you want to be in tier 1. So if we would have been 63%, we probably would have been in the $340,000 in new money this year. So the interesting thing will be to determine whether that new money floating into some districts push them up to tier 2, and since we just got a little bit, if we'll flow back down to tier 1 in the next year or so of the fund. So again, the connections between these two are pretty apparent, and is that we finally are using things that are based on research, which is a huge win for us in the state of Illinois. What we're trying to figure out is what the right answer is and how we can fund the right answer so we can produce the best results in schools. And the tough part is that we are being told over and over again is that with new money, you are supposed to enact the things that we said are going to work in evidence-based funding, and then we're going to review the cycle. And so there's a lot of pressure now that with the new money to perform a little bit better so we can show the taxpayers and show the state that with the new money is producing more results. The tough part is that we're undoing years of really lean staffing and things of that nature, and it's not a linear progression that simply by adding an instructional coach at one level for 1 year, you're not going to see an instant tick potentially in outcomes. Now, hopefully you would, and I think that we have seen that in our district that we had really great results with that, but it's a hard thing to quantify that quickly. So over time, however, with more money, we should create better outcomes for kids. So our overall impact is that we feel like we have great alignment between what ESSA wants and what our strategic plan wants. So we feel like we're really good with that. As the new money flows in, it is my job and board's job to hold me accountable and my job to hold the board accountable, that we use the new money to drive directly at things that we say are our stated goals, and our stated goals happen to align directly with ESSA. So as we're getting additional revenue, we should be using it on things like we are. So we're going to work really hard to improve our math outcomes. So we're going to hire a math coach. We're working really hard to get kids college and career ready. So we're going to hire a college and career ready coordinator. So these things are directly from what evidence-based funding says, research says we should be spending our money on. As we're getting the additional money, we're going to try to attack those things, and those things should then correspondingly improve where we're at in terms of our tiers and ratings on the academic indicators within ESSA. So I feel like we're really well positioned. I just have no idea where the tiers are going to come. I truly believe that there is a good shot we're tier 1 in some of our schools, but I have no idea, again, because I don't know the metrics they're going to use. And I would not be surprised if we end up all over the place within the ranking system. So it's just to provide you as much information as possible. I went a little bit over the time that I wanted to. If you've watched this whole thing, I sincerely appreciate you sticking with me. Again, any questions, my phone number, 815-980-0310. Thank you, and make it a great day.